Hello there, dear friends, and welcome once again to the Relaxed Fantasy Review. Today, we're continuing our series in the Tome of Heroes, a third-party expansion to D&D 5e. We're going to be talking about a pair of sub-races that are found in this book that expand upon one of our favorite D&D classics, the Dwarves. D&D dwarves come in a few varieties, the hill dwarves, the mountain dwarves. Really, they are a very, very strong race. And their sub-races that can be found in this book add a nice and fun twist on the dwarves that you don't see in many other places. They do keep several of their dwarven features, their standard dwarven features, which we'll go over in a little bit. But before we get to the details of these sub-dwarves, sub-races of the dwarves, I'd like to let you know that Relax Fantasy Review has memberships. For just $1 a month, you can support me here on YouTube and get a couple benefits. First, you get a little badge next to your name in the comments, letting folks know that you're a supporter, but also you get early access to my videos. I upload videos Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I upload them a day early for members only. If that interests you, you can click the join button. It's just down there below the subscribe button. I'd love to see you in the comments with your member badge. If it doesn't interest you, that's totally fine. Just liking and subscribing to the channel, heck, just watching the video at all is a great way to support me. I'm very thankful for you being here and watching my content, so thank you. So, dwarves as a standard, we'll go over this real quickly. They get +2 to their constitution, a very, very sturdy thing for dwarves to have. Medium-sized creatures, 25-foot movement speed, although their speed will not be slowed if they don't meet the strength requirements for heavy armor. They get resistance to poison damage and advantage against the poison condition. They get weapon training. They get tool proficiencies. They get the stone cunning feature where they have expertise on history checks to do with stonework. They speak Dwarvish and Common, typically. And then you get into the sub-races. The first one we're going to talk about is the Fireforge Dwarf. Going on the theme of dwarves being some of the best smiths in the world, these guys basically moved into the volcanoes of the mountains and became allies with the fire elementals. They get a +1 to their intelligence, which is a tough skill to build into. I mean, dwarves make fine wizards for sure, but it is the most niche ability score in the game. So a +1 to that, I just give a 5 out of 10. But then they also have another thing. It's called Burned Vision. Because they grew up surrounded by the glow of magma, they've naturally lost Dwarven Dark Vision, which I find puzzling, and I find, like, why do that? I suppose that it's just how they work, and to be fair, lots of races don't have dark vision, but you miss it when it's gone. I'm going to give this written-in feature a 5 out of 10, because it's not technically a nerf, it's just sad that you don't have it and all other dwarves do. However, you do get an extra skill tool proficiency on top of the ones that you already got as from being a dwarf, and you can choose between smiths or glassblowers tools, and you can get expertise in this tool set, one of the only ways to get expertise in tools. I mean, I think that smiths is typically considered superior to glassblowers, but hey, you play into whatever fantasy you like, and expertise in a tool set, I'm giving that 9 out of 10. They also have the Forgeborn trait. This just gives them flat fire damage resistance, just like the Tieflings. And I think that's great. Having a damage resistance at all is good, and fire is a pretty common damage type. I'm giving this 9 out of 10. Then they have Friend to the Azure, which is the name for the fire elementals in this case. This allows them to speak Ignean, which is kind of a sub-language. The full language is Primordial, which allows you to speak to all elementals. This is like 1/4 of that language. It's still a language. I would just consider it kind of a secondary language. I'm giving it 7 out of 10. And then finally, they have the Reforge trait. This allows them to cast the Mending spell, which is a cantrip that isn't that uncommon, but it normally takes a minute to cast, and it repairs items. These guys can cast it as an action, repairing a 1-foot tear in something like that. However, it only works on metal objects, so they can fix broken swords, broken armor incredibly quickly with their magic. This is an incredibly niche thing, as gear does not typically break in D&D. Like, item durability is something that's usually added in as a homebrew rule. So if that's a thing, then this would be great for you. Personally, I'm just giving this 6 out of 10. The regular mending spell is fine, there's nothing wrong with it. But it's certainly not one of the more powerful cantrips, and this buff doesn't really change much. So yeah, the Fireforge dwarves, I give them an 8 out of 10 overall, just like I gave to the other dwarven subraces. I think these guys are solid. It's a shame they lost their dark vision, but they get a lot to make up for it. The other dwarf subrace is quite a bit different. We call them the Spindrift dwarves, and they have nothing to do with the stone or the mountains at all. They, in fact, are dwarves that grew up on the sea. They are ship dwarves, pirate dwarves, sailor dwarves, if you will. They start with a +1 to their dexterity, a much better stat to get a buff to than intelligence, at least in my opinion. And I don't think that's a pretty... I think most characters would like a buff to their dexterity, so 8 out of 10 for that. Then they get Dwarven Marine Training. This actually replaces Dwarven Combat Training. Dwarven combat training typically gives a dwarf proficiency in like axes and hammers and traditional dwarven weapons. This one switches it up. You get proficiency in clubs, hand axes are still here, hand crossbows, nets, rapiers, and scimitars. The whole thing just oozes pirates. You get more weapons. You get debatably better weapons. You get finesse ones like rapiers, and you get hand crossbows, which are arguably the best weapon in the game with their crossbow expert sharpshooter traits. And you can still use a hand axe if you'd like to, a scimitar, and the net is here as well, a very, very interesting mix. I say this is slightly better than Dwarven Combat Training, and I say it's 8 out of 10. And then you get you get nautical proficiency. Nautical proficiency replaces your tool proficiency that you naturally get for being a dwarf as well. Normally you can choose between smiths, masons, and brewers' tools. These guys replace that with carpenters, wood carvers, or navigators. Very ship-based. These are fine. I mean, personally, I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen another, except you also get proficiency in water vehicles, which just tacks on the end there. Whether you're going to be on a ship or not is, very situational, but just having another proficiency is good, and I say this is also slightly superior. I give it 8 out of 10 as well. Then you have the rigger traits, and this has to do with riggings on a ship. When you are not wearing heavy armor and not carrying a shield, so, light or medium and no shield, you gain a climbing speed equal to your walking speed, so a 25-foot climbing speed. That's great. Extra speeds are fun. It's a shame that you can't wear heavy armor or have a shield on while you're doing this, but it's still good. And I think if you're playing into like a light armor or a medium armor build who dual wields or single hands or even dual two-handed weapons can make this work, I think it's good. I think this is 9 out of 10. But then you have the Sailor's Eyes trait, and just like the Fireforge dwarves, these dwarves have spent so much time on the open sea and in the sky that they have lost their dark vision. So yeah, 5 out of 10 for not having dark vision, unfortunately. You do have the Shipwright trait. This replaces Stone Cunning, so no longer are you making history checks about stonework with expertise. Instead, you're making investigation checks about ships with expertise. Cool. Like I like the theme here. There's storytelling to be had, but the amount of times you're going to be making investigation checks on ships is so niche that I can't really give this anything better than Stone Cunning. I'd argue Stone Cunning actually might be slightly better, but I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10, because it's kind of a ribbon feature that is only going to come up in very specific situations. And then finally, you get one other unique thing, and this is Spindrift Step. Once per rest, so this recharges on a short rest, you can use your bonus action to give yourself water walking. Now, water walking is a good spell to have in your back pocket anyway, but these guys can just naturally do it. Now, it doesn't last the length of this water walking spell, nor is it the water walking spell. You just grant yourself the ability to walk on water for a number of rounds equal to your level. So, level 1, that's a single round that you can just pop to the surface and run away, or whatever. And then as you level up, it becomes more and more rounds, which lets you, even fight while walking on the water, in theory. The only downside to this is that it does take concentration to do it. So if you lose concentration, you'll just fall in. And if you were concentrating on a spell, you lose concentration on that. But knowing that you have this kind of push button in case of emergency water walk is kind of cool. I've never quite seen anything like it. I think it's worth an 8 out of 10. If it didn't take concentration, I'd give it a 10 out of 10 because it's just no downside. But with concentration, I'm going to bring that down to 8 out of 10. Overall, this is such a unique twist on the dwarves, making them sailors instead of stoneworkers, and I like it. I think that it's very thematic. It replaces a lot of the original features, and I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10 as well. I think that it is the dwarves deserved this, rather than just being the stoneworkers from the hills and the heavy fighters and the tanky people, giving them some dexterity and some, extra weapons and climbing speeds, or with the Fireforge even, giving them the ability to get more tools and resist fire and work with the elementals. This is just nice. It's nice to see more types of dwarves in the game. And none of them are broken. The powers that they have are very solid, comparable to other dwarves of their kind. And I think that it is, you could easily take these and put them in a D&D game. Talk to your dungeon master if these two types of dwarf subraces call out to you. This has been the Relaxed Fantasy Review. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe down below. Have a look for the join button down there, as well as a link that I'll leave in the description to the Tome of Heroes. It was published by Kobold Press, third-party book, and it is a wonderful addition to D&D. I highly recommend you check it out for yourself. Have a good one, my friends.